Hey guys, it's Dr. Adam Nally coming to you live from Waddell, Arizona. It's late in the evening. I'm coming to you usually a little later than I normally do, but had a long day today and had to get some stuff caught up, and wanted to talk to you specifically about part number 19 of the series that I've been doing, 25 Reasons to Be in Ketosis. This part is the push-pull effect of ketones on the liver and on insulin. And so if you're here, and I'm only coming on to Facebook Live because I can't do this on Periscope very effectively. So hopefully the folks that usually watch Periscope will pick it up on Facebook Live and be able to see it on YouTube when I upload it later. Hopefully that'll work well for you, and it will be good because I wanted to show you a couple images because this is kind of a complex subject to try to talk about. Hey Carolyn, how are you? Thanks for signing in. So if you're new to the broadcast, put a 1 in the chat box and tell me where you're from so I can acknowledge where you are and who you are. That's awesome. I appreciate that. So, hey, Ann, how are you? Welcome. It's good to see you. So what I wanted to do in just a brief couple minutes here is to talk to you about how insulin affects the liver and how as we gain weight, the fat cells affect the liver. So I'm gonna pop a slide up here, and Nina says, can you please explain how this is safe for diabetics to follow a keto diet and drink ketones? All right, Nina, I'm going to show you some effect that happen, and this is going to hopefully help people understand this. For a lot of years, we've talked about insulin being the key regulator, but in reality, our blood glucose is regulated by the liver, not by the pancreas. And so let me show you what this does here. I'm going to pop this up onto the screen here. Can you hear me now? I realized that when I pulled myself off the screen, there's no sound. I've been yammering for probably 5 or 6 minutes. You can see that mouse moving around. Thanks. As I'm the graphic went up and this audio is gone. That's terrible. All right. What I probably ought to do is just start this thing over and then I'll post the new one. So can you hear me now? I sound like a Verizon commercial. A great, Charity. Thank you for popping that in there. All right. I am going to try to restart this and show you guys what's happening again. So I realized when I pull myself off the screen, the sound goes bye-bye. And that's a bad thing. So what I'm going to have to do, and I'm not quite sure how to switch positions of these images, I may have to, let me see if I can do it this way. Bring it up bigger or smaller. I don't know if you can see the mouse here. Maybe I may have to do it this way. All right. Anyway, let's see if it works any better that way. Not so hot, huh? No. Oh, there we go. That's better. Okay. So you can see me and the screen at the same time. This is kind of cool. This is the first time I've played with this version, so I apologize, guys. Let me start over. For those of you that just joined in, welcome. My name is Dr. Adam Nally. I yammered for probably 3 or 4 minutes without a mic. So for those of you that stuck around watching, thank you for sticking around. And for those that kept putting comments in that I couldn't see, I appreciate it. So I'm a board-certified family physician, a board-certified obesity medicine specialist coming to you live from Waddell, Arizona, where I live. I actually practice in Surprise, Arizona, a suburb of in Northwest Phoenix. What I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about is the push-pull effect of insulin and the fat cells on the liver, and specifically ketones. So let me show you specifically, so hopefully you can see this image here and what's happening, and I'll start over. So the liver is in charge of keeping the blood sugar regulated with glucose around 60 to 100 milligrams per deciliter, and that's its job. It wants to keep that blood sugar right where it should be, and it does what's called gluconeogenesis, which means making glucose and raising the blood sugar, and glycogen synthesis, which means it makes more glycogen, which is a backup for the glucose if the glucose runs out. Faye says, we're fixing to have you our own little get together without you. It sounds like you guys were having a little get together without me. It's great. So let me explain here. So what happens is the liver produces glucose. Now, when that glucose level begins to rise, say you eat a meal, or say you, for whatever reason, the glucose bumps up, then the pancreas down here, and hopefully you can see the little itty bitty mouse down in this region, produces insulin. And that insulin feeds back to the liver and is supposed to blockade the production of glycogen and blockade actually it causes, insulin will cause a breakdown of glycogen, which releases a little bit of glucose and blockades the formation of the glycogen, and it blockades the production of glucose. So there's this feedback mechanism that's a negative with insulin. So as glucose goes up, insulin rises and slows the glucose down. When insulin falls, glucose goes up. And so there's this push-pull effect of insulin on the liver. Now, the challenge is that as the fat cells also drive the production of glucose. So when the fat cells are shrinking and the fat's coming out of this fat cell, it produces these 5 hormones: adiponectin, leptin, resistin, interleukin 6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Now, these two, tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin 6, actually have they're key hormones in cancer formation, and they're the ones that drive extra glucose production for those cancer cells, and that's why those hormones go up significantly. But tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin 6, when they go up, actually inhibit the ability of insulin to blockade the liver. So the liver, it starts kicking out more and more glucose, even though the insulin's rising. So in a pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic, you have both a high insulin and a high glucose. And this is why, because the fat cells are blockading the effect of insulin and the pancreas is kicking out more. And the fat cells are also, through resistin, telling the body to produce, or telling the liver to make more glucose, and that's the problem. So in a person who's insulin resistant, and this starts 20 years before you ever become a type 2 diabetic, what ends up happening is you're producing high levels of glucose, and the insulin can't feed back, so high levels of insulin kick in. Well, the insulin is telling the fat cell, hey, store more fat. So the fat cells are storing more, getting bigger, and producing even more of these hormones that are causing this. It's kind of like revving your car engine and then having to pump the brake to slow down, and then revving the car engine and having to pump the brake to slow down. It doesn't work so hot when you don't take your foot off the gas. And that's essentially what's occurring here. So this is the challenge that's arising. Now, how do you fix this? Well, a lot of times I have patients that we just cut down the carbs, but their glucose still stays high and they're still gaining weight. And the challenge is that these fat cells are still overproducing hormone, and that's because they're not being inhibited. And why are they not being inhibited? And this is why the Paleolithic diet doesn't work for everybody. This is why low carb doesn't work for everybody, because the inhibitor is this. And I'm going to flip screens here, so I want you to watch really closely. All of a sudden, now we introduce ketones. Now, ketones actually inhibit all 5 of these hormones through a carnitine process and FGF21 DNA creation. And this means the ketone actually rewires your DNA to start kicking out more of this FGF21. It actually starts to suppress the excess hormone production from the adipocyte of the fat cells. That then allows the insulin brake to hit that liver and slow the liver down and allow less glucose to be formed. And so this is that push-pull effect that arises from the body. And this is why being able to get into ketosis is so effective. This is why intermittent fasting is effective, because you're allowing ketones to kick in, put a brake on the fat cells, let those fat cells start to shrink because you're sucking the fat out of them, and it drives insulin to be effective at a lower level. So less insulin becomes more effective on the liver, which is what we want to have in insulin-resistant patients. So that's essentially what is happening there, and that's what you end up seeing. So hopefully that makes sense a little more clearly. And this is why when I first started seeing people drink exogenous ketones, all of a sudden they started seeing weight loss. Well, it's because of this specific effect right here, where those ketones are directly inhibiting those 5 hormones that allows that insulin resistance to improve. So just the ketones themselves don't solve the problem, because you've got to also decrease the overall insulin drive from the carb intake. So shifting to a low carbohydrate diet and trying to get into ketosis. But this is where adding ketones jumpstarts the whole process. And this is why I'm such a big fan of adding exogenous ketones in a Kickstart program or things of that nature, and how it really truly moves things forward. So hopefully this is really helpful. Now, is type 1 diabetes safe to drink ketones? Absolutely they are. The key is those type 1 diabetics need to be closely monitoring their blood sugars and adjusting the insulin based on what's happening with this feedback mechanism, because this feedback mechanism can happen a lot faster in a type 1 diabetic. So understanding how to dose yourself correctly is key. This is why I have a number of type 1 diabetics that actually do very well with exogenous ketones. Now, I highly recommend they follow up with their doctor, and they're watching this closely, because this feedback mechanism, you're missing an additional break in this effect with type 1 diabetics, because they don't have the adequate suppression if insulin isn't given enough and isn't as effective in this case. So what happens is that type 1 diabetic may need to adjust up or down that insulin load depending on how effective those ketones are on this whole system. So that's the key. Kelly says, thank God for ketones. Yes, I am grateful for ketones. They are really the break that's there. Vicky says, I love your graphic. Fat cell looks like pizza. On your phone, it probably does look like pizza, Vicky. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Hello, Pamela. How are you? You are welcome for the podcast, Rhonda. So if you guys have, and Faith says the image actually helps her understand it better. This really was clarifying for me as I put all these pieces together. I thought, my patients need to see this. You guys need to see this, and hopefully this will help you guys there. So those of you who stuck in here for this, I probably lost a bunch of people as you saw the mouse wiggle around in space and heard nothing, no sound, and we're staring at this graphic. So that's really the key here. Pop any questions in that you have. I'm gonna see if I can switch this back here. So I think if I pull this one down right there. Oh, there I am. Okay, cool. So throw some questions in there, and I'll try to answer them if I can. Tammy says, that was an amazing explanation. You are very welcome, Tammy. Hopefully that helps. As to the numbers, says Miranda, as to the difference in bumpers, or I'm not sure what that means. You may want to clarify that. Does the level of ketone matter on suppression? We don't fully know yet, but we think that it appears to me clinically that the ketone level needs to be above 0.7 for this suppression to really be effective. That's what it appears to be. There's no scientific study that I've seen that has a quantifiable level, but I do know that as the ketone level rises, it allows for suppression of the fat cells. Now, what we find is that some people's ketones run a little higher all the time, and they don't see a dramatic change, and that's probably because they have a healthier fat cell, and this process is working more effectively. But in my patients who are notably more obese, this is really a game changer for them, and that's why I like to get them into ketosis, number one, and then if they're struggling to bring those ketones up, identifying what may be keeping them out of ketosis, and then adding exogenous ketones. And so if you're interested in exogenous ketones, go to my website, docmuscles.com. You can check out the keto cart we have there that gets you into the Jumpstart program. If you go to docmuscles.com and then click on keto cart, and it'll take you to those programs. Or if you just want to try exogenous ketones, go to docmuslesketones.com. If somebody wants to pop that in there, that would be great. Just to refresh, this is basically the push-pull effect of ketones on the liver. I probably should have put that up first, but I forgot to do that because I was so excited about talking into space and you guys not hearing me. Let's see. How many times a day do you recommend taking ketones? I recommend if you get to at least twice a day, you're going to see a better effect. Although the ketone effect based on your insulin level, how much insulin you're producing, may wear off, Elena, between anywhere between 2 hours and 6 hours, depending on how much insulin you're producing. So that's why I'm a big fan of these. And what I see clinically is that it really does seem to help in that regard. All right, let's see if there's any other good. Oh, a ton of questions just popped in here. So let me see. Ruth says, worth the wait. Thank you for hanging in there, Ruth. I appreciate that. Terrell says, love ketones. Why do people in ketosis don't get as cold? Because the ketone actually stimulates a more efficient contraction of a smooth muscle. And so I think there's an slightly increased heat production because they're burning fat. I suspect. Nobody's ever done a scientific study to show that, but I suspect that's what it is. Amazing insight, anxious for your appointment. Oh, cool, Susan, that's awesome. Jennifer says, awesome info, recommended brands. I personally like the Prove It brand. I realize they're a direct marketing company. A lot of people don't like that, but they seem to have the most effect. I've tested myself with all of them, and for whatever reason, their max version seems to put me into ketosis much more effectively. It does seem to do that for a lot of my other patients, although I have patients that do well with the other brands. I'm not trying to be preferential, but in this case, that's what I've seen. Now, if another brand seems to outperform, the Prove It brands, I may go a different direction at that point. But as of today, the Prove It Max brands seem to really be the most effective. They're more expensive, that's for sure, and you have to deal with that direct market company. But what I've done as a physician for my patients, because a lot of them don't want to deal with that, is I just have the store, and they just go to the store and purchase them right there. It's the docmuslesketones.com. That'll link you right into that store, and you can just purchase them right there, and they'll ship them right to you. I also have patients that purchase them directly from my office, and that solves that problem. I'm a distributor for them, and so I do earn a profit when they purchase, and I have to tell you that. But that's why I like them, and that's why I use them, is because they seem to be more effective. The deeper the ketosis, better. It seems to be that way, although I don't know if there's a limit. Is 2 better than 3 or 3 better than 2? We don't know that. We know in epilepsy that does seem to play a role, but in weight loss and fat reduction, I think so. That's what we're starting to see. So the goal is to be over 0.7. Yes. So if you're registering between 0.9 and 1.5, you're doing great, Jennifer. That's fantastic. That's really where we want you to be at. How many times a day? Oh, I said 2. We talked to Elena about that one. If ketones are high, 2 to 4, and I'm struggling to lose weight on a keto diet, will exogenous ketones actually help? Danny, this is where I think they do. What I find is that as people add these exogenous ketones, I suspect that even though your ketone levels are up, your insulin feedback isn't kicking in correctly. Now, that also takes time. I tell people for this feedback mechanism to kick in and for your body to fix the way it's transcribing the carnitine and the FGF21 hormone, you're literally taking DNA, you're remodeling the metabolism of the cells, and that can take months to do. I find that decreasing this ketone level, decreasing the insulin loads takes up to 24 months for people to be effective. So you have to be patient with the state of ketosis. Having been taken 18 months and it helped fix your liver. It does that. In about 12 months, I see the liver improve. And this is why fatty liver disease is affected, because you're actually fixing this problem. You're now allowing the body to stop the excessive glycogen synthesis that causes that fatty liver disease. Let's see. So can you take ketones with food? You can, and I do all the time. In fact, I just had my dinner and I'm drinking exogenous ketones myself right now. That's what I do. New to testing, blood glucose levels tested twice within 3 minutes. Okay, well, blood glucose isn't the fact here. And remember, blood glucose will fluctuate based on where you prick your finger at, Miranda, because those glucose monitors will be plus or minus 10 points off. So blood glucose is very dynamic. It's going to flux. So you may get a blood sugar here, and then you prick your finger, and the stress response of that pricking your finger may actually raise or lower. The pain actually can cause a dampening and lower the glucose, but the pain itself can release cortisol and can cause a rise in glucose. So you can see a flux depending on how uncomfortable that pinprick was to your finger with glucose. But this is where glucose won't give you an answer as to what you're looking for. Glucose testing doesn't tell you what you need. You need to check ketones. I'm always cold and in ketosis. Well, now, Tara-Lee, the other reason you're always cold is you probably have less fat on your body now as you're losing weight, and that's one of the reasons. And so Faith plugged in the keto cart here. Yeah, if you want to go to the keto cart, this is where I give you a pack of ketones, your vitamins, berberine, and you have access to the Keto Clan Facebook group, which gives you some more interactive help with all those people in that group with stuff like this all the time. Joyrun says Max rocks. Yes, it does. I'm glad you caught me, Jessica. It's great. Have I heard anyone have a restless or tight jaw? I have not, Raimundo. If you're having tight jaw, that's a whole other problem, and I don't think that's related to the ketosis. That's something different. Recipe for fluff is in my Keto Clan group, Holly. You got to go in. You got to become a member of the Keto Clan to get that recipe. I took your advice and out my salts. Not feeling lethargic anymore. You are. Oh, that's awesome, Jessica. You read the blog post. Fantastic. You are very welcome, Miranda. Okay. Well, you guys, hopefully you're having a great evening. I hope this gives you some insight into the push-pull mechanism of ketones and how they are effective with people. Hopefully this will give you some insight into why I'm a fan of exogenous ketones and how this mechanism works. This is not written up anywhere. This is from my research and what I've seen over the last 13 years in using ketones themselves and using exogenous ketones and trying to understand what's happening with the adiponectin and the leptin and these hormone responses when people use them or don't use them. And so this is from it's research that's put together all separately, but then that's what we as docs do. We apply the stuff clinically and then see what happens. So that's really what we're doing. So you're welcome, Linda. Hopefully all's well. Well, I'm going to sign off. You guys have a great evening. Remember, keep the fat high, keep the carbs low. And there's one more question. Let's see. Elena says, when checking your ketones through the blood, what is the optimal reading for fat loss? Optimal seems to be above 0.7, Alana. I don't necessarily know if 1 is better than 3. No one has actually been able to identify for fat loss what that is. I know clinically that if I don't get people up to 0.7 or higher, their fat loss isn't real effective. So that's the best answer I can give you because there's no great research beyond that. How do I become a member of the Keto Clan? You have to register for one of the Keto Cart products, and that's how we get you in there. The other way is if you're a part of the old membership site that I had, those people are grandfathered in there too. That's the answer to that. Holly, hopefully that gives you some answers. Should I watch the amount of fat my kids eat at home when they eat way too many carbs? Well, the amazing thing about kids, Miranda, is that kids' metabolisms are on overdrive. They're literally probably twice as fast as yours and mine because they're growing as well as being active. So I mean, they can actually get away with more carbohydrate. I would not watch the amount of fat that they're eating because that fat's going to suppress their appetite, so they crave less carbs. Now, if you notice they're gaining weight, then I'd start backing the carbs back. But you know, if you allow kids to have real food, you give them bacon and sausage and eggs for breakfast, the carbs they have at lunch aren't going to be a problem because they're so physically active. You are very welcome, Rhonda. And then Alana says, thank you. Very cool, says Holly. Oh, you guys are welcome. All right, guys, I hope you have a great evening. Remember, go to docmuscles.com. Check out my website. Check out the blog post. I put one up about salt. Was it yesterday? I think I put it up yesterday. I think it went up about how salt affects this. That's a whole other piece as well. Check out the keto cart that's there. Look at the freebies. Sign up for my 6-part weight loss mini course if you've never seen that before. Go to docmuscles.com. We're revamping the membership site, and that's going to be revamped and up and running around May 1st. My book comes out April 10th. If you haven't registered for my pre-registered for the book, go to the blog post. Click on or go to my website, docmuscles.com, click on the blog, and then click on the link to the book and pre-register for the book. Tina, I'm glad you caught me live as well. Thank you, Miranda. I'm trying to be awesome for you guys and help you out because this is stuff that nobody teaches anywhere, and it really is stuff that people need to understand why a ketogenic lifestyle is so effective. My book talks about this stuff and expands beyond this. So you got to check out the book, docmuscles.com. We just heard that Costco made a big order, so it's going to probably be in Costco as well. And it's going to, I think Target has it, and so I'm excited. It'll be great. And Danny says he ordered his book. Fantastic. You're welcome, Joe Run. You guys have a great evening. So again, keep the fat high, keep the carbs low, and pass the bacon. And I'll talk to you again another night. Have a great evening. Take care, guys. Bye.